What up, family? It's your favorite Puerto Rican, Brooklyn, Philly, and I'm back with another message. Again, I heard the ancestors speak. Let the ancestors speak. Um, I started off doing some automatic writing, some online research that I was led to based on literally being awakened at 3:38. When I typed in 3:38 into the search engine, interestingly enough, it came out to be an Riflegun, Bullet, that had to do with this type of Bullet being one very instrumental in something like that is this 338 being became significant in 2025, but it was about his accuracy and his long distance. That started me down a rabbit hole to look at some other things. So persecution, from Persian persecution, from 338, that era, from Shapur II's persecution. And then it also talked about library cataloging system. If you look up 338 is in regard to resources, digital media, and that specific type of cataloging system, right? Where before it was you pull out the file cabinet and you go through the library card catalog to get the resource. Now this is more, this is the new system. I then got Eagles lost, Eagles meaning the NFL football team. My football team lost to penalties. So there was something significant about all of the penalties and how they stacked up, and they had something to do with lack of discipline. I didn't write that, I just heard that, but I heard it then too. 49ers, their opposition in the entire 4 quarters, if I'm not correct, the last I had heard, had only one penalty throughout the entire game. There's something major or significant about that. Again, it speaks to, I'm hearing discipline, astuteness, caliber, which is interesting, is going back to, long range, accuracy, and target to that 338 initial. Again, it was for, okay. And then there was something about underestimating opponents, meaning the Eagles. It was evident both in the last game and in this one. There was this sense of arrogance and ego that needs to be released, a humbling experience, an opportunity to recharge. There is definitely unlimited potential. And they had me do like an arrow connection with underestimating opponents and strategizing -foresight -insight. So there's something about those two correlating, right? Maybe the way to not underestimate your opponent is to strategize, to have foresight and insight. One of the things that I'm hearing now and I heard then was cockiness, right? This sense of when you think you already have won, right? It's almost like counting your chickens before they're hatched. That's an old one. So yeah, I'm just gonna say it. Nick Sirianni, which I have mixed feelings, some space feelings about, not just because of these two games, just in general since inception. But nevertheless, the last game, which was lost by them, the whole first string I think that's the way you say it. Like the main star players were not played. Some were intermittently placed, in and out of the game, but for the most part, our major players of the team, excuse me, were removed. And it was strategically, supposedly, right? I mean, some commentators would say that it was purposeful in the sense that it gave your main star players time to rest and recharge. And they mentioned something here about recharge and unlimited potential. But I felt a sense of arrogance and cockiness in that play, right? And then the decision, right? I don't know. I'm not a football expert, so I'll admit that. But just in street life for me, in the way, I operate from that dynamic, and even in the work field, right? From both perspectives that way, translating into those decisions there in the football field, which I don't know if they're even translatable like that, transferable like that, meaning. However, in my point of view, it's already sending a signal that, I automatically think that I'm better than you, but not just better than you. I think I'm so much better than you that I'm allowing my second ranked officers to come in and dust you, right? And although there's nothing wrong with such confidence, right? But there is something that you have to understand, that the minute you send that signal out, depending on your opponent, right, there can be two reactions. One opponent can say, now I'm hearing the in the Bible, in the Old Testament, well, what the Christian canon refers to the Old Testament, there's a sense of, I don't know why I heard it just now, but a sense of, from a Western perspective, tends to be a sense, or tinged with a sense of disrespect. Again, this cockiness, this arrogance, right? Even in labeling it the Old Testament. In the West, only because the West seems to not hold, and I'm not saying all of the West, but it doesn't seem to hold prestige or give honor, right? Or hold validity or value to old things the way, in my experience, the East does, right? Particularly, it can be clearly seen even with our elderly here in the U.S., right? Typically in the U.S., elderlies are shipped to old senior citizen homes where they get bed sores, left urinated on themselves, unless they're the, nursing homes of la creme, or with a lot of financial resources. A lot of the times, our elderly suffer, right? Whereas in other communities and other cultures, and by particularly Eastern that I've seen, there's this high regard for the elderly. They seem to bring a lot of, knowledge and wisdom that the family, the community, and the youth want to extrapolate from. Whereas in the West, it seems to be discarded, ignored, thought of as replaceable, and problematic even, right? Get off the road, don't drive. Ageism is a real thing. Okay. So they're reminding me of the story where I forget who was the brother. So I'm getting the scenery of Abraham up in the mountain looking at the people going into the promised land. Oh my God, right? Abraham was not allowed to go into the promised land. Again, there was this sense of, I don't know. Are you saying spirit? He was arrogant or cocky? Because when he came back down from the mountain the first time with the 10 Commandments, he smashed that tablet, right? He came down to see them giving offerings to Baal, the cows. Interesting. I just heard a reading with Hathor, who I think is personified sometimes with the cow. Interesting. which in my mind I'm hearing, which would have been more ancient to what he was introducing. So this sense of, again, right, nullifying or saying, oh, well, that's old, or you don't do it that way, or, and I know that that's not the way it's interpreted to us, is about like, oh my God, worshiping another God and all this other stuff. But listen, I'm telling you what I'm hearing. So when they get into the new promised land, or as that they're crossing over to the new promised land, the brother that can take them over, it's not Samuel, it's not, why can't I remember his name? Nevertheless, he sends men to scout. When he sends certain men to scout, they go over and they look at the people in the promised land. They come back and report they're giants, right? They're giants. And they report back with fear and trepidation. Whereas then when another was sent to scout out, they reported a land filled with milk and honey and big grapes and stuff like that. I might be kind of like mixing them up. Nevertheless, the point that Spirit, I believe is trying to get through right now is this sense of to some it caused fear and trepidation, and the other people in the land seemed to be as giants to them. To another, they weren't. With the teams going back to the NFL, you would think, now I'm hearing like battles, right? Like Ether with Nas, right? That was like one of the illest tracks of like diss tracks ever, right? You would think it would have annihilated Jay-Z, right? We've seen where, I think, was it 50 who hit that diss track, like Ja Rule, right? Ja Rule where, right? So we've been known to see how I'm hearing MC Lyte's like famous diss track to the brother, where they've been known to like cause some serious hurt, but then in others it causes like a, oh, you think it's sweet like that? Oh, you think you got this like that? Oh, you think you chumping me like that? Oh, you think, I'm sweet like that? Let me show you how sweet I am. It causes a different type of visceral reaction, right? And for you to already send that signal that I already know, now I'm hearing David and Goliath, right? Goliath came, swinging the sword, saying he was the biggest and the baddest and what? And had the whole army chumped. And then here comes little old David, the sheep herder, right? With 5 smooth stones and a little slingshot, right? Target, accuracy, distance. Interesting, going back to 338. 5 smooth stones, change, right? The unlikely, what seems improbable, right? Because even yesterday with the stats, if you probably looked at the betting world, people were betting on green, right? They ain't see red, and red won, right? And again, when you look at the game, and again, I'm not an expert, but when, if I just looking at the way I viewed it in terms of penalties alone, the fact that you didn't get but one during the whole, that's strategy, dog. That's discipline. That's a sense of, I'm hearing foresight and insight, right? That the opposing team, I don't know if it became lackadaisical, if it became too cocky, if it became too arrogant, what the F was going on, but The 10 spies who brought the bad report were in line. The giants were real and the walls were high. Their mistake wasn't observing the facts, it was forgetting the promise. Because again, thank you, Spirit. Oh God, you're so good. After I went through, then I heard 436, which meant I saw the number 436 about an hour later, which was effective communication, between the balance between the practical and the creative. And then it brought me back to 338 because I remember seeing in the numerology, meaning balance and equilibrium between the spiritual and the personal. So there was this sense of balance and equilibrium that was important and significant, right? And if you're talking about effective communication, the 49ers were effectively communicating, to say the least. But okay. But then I went down a rabbit hole of some other stuff that's insignificant. But then I started hearing the song, The Presence of the Lord is Here. I feel it in the atmosphere. The presence of the Lord is here. I can hear the presence of the Lord. And I'm going to get my blessings right now. Yeah, I can feel the presence of the Lord. And then the other song that came through on is O Jerusalem, right? With the Zulu. You can't lay down. If you're going to stay here, you need to lay down. With the Zulu lyrics, right? And it's talking about, and I became very emotional, right? And I started crying and praying some more and crying out the Lord. And then I heard clear as day, whose report will you believe? And then I'm like, oh my God, isn't that in the Bible? And I began to look it up, and it is. It's a reference in the Bible. And now he wants to move. Okay, go. If you want to move, go. Whose report will you believe? I heard clear as day. And then I was reminded of this little girl dancing in the street yesterday when I was driving back home. And the sense of freedom, right? She might have been about 9 years old. She was crossing the street, it seemed like, to meet her brother. She had on like little headphones. And while she was crossing, she was in you can tell, in tune with whatever music she was listening to. And when she crossed the street to this corner, the little brother was on the other side and he was about to cross to her. So she crossed this way to him, and then so that they could meet. Prior to him crossing, because the light needed to change for him to cross over to her, she started doing like these little moves, like, right? But it was this sense of liberation and freedom and dance like nobody's watching kind of stuff. Which seemed a little out of order, out of place in a world, right? Particularly for a little girl at 9 in the neighborhood that she was walking, right? I mean, it's sad to say, but it felt like surreal to see such innocence right before my eyes, such freedom. And it caused an emotional stirring in me. It reminded me of my own little girl and how I used to, do very similarly, and how the world then has a way of quieting that, or I heard silencing it. Confirmation why I went there, and well, because it was under whose report will you believe. So there's something about this childlike essence that needs to concentrate and remember the promise, right? It's going into the grasshopper complex. They said we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes. That's Numbers 13:33. Interesting. The giant only becomes a threat when it makes you see yourself as small. The Caleb spirit. Caleb didn't deny the giants. He just believed they were bred for us. You see what I'm saying? So, it's almost as if both teams said we don't, right? Because the Eagles were literally the Super Bowl champions. So in the, and then that ranking, or that, they're the Giants, right? So, and it's not, I'm spiritually bypassing and saying that that obstacle isn't there, or that mountain isn't there, or that opponent isn't there, or that opponent isn't a good opponent. But again, it's how the one is saying, how do you view yourself? What conflicts are you taking on? And then how are you going to, again, is this diss track going to annihilate you? Or is it going to empower the F? And there's something about, which was very interesting. And I get it. This new Eagles team is mostly composed from new players that don't have that underdog spirit, right? Although that underdog spirit seemed to have become permanent, to some point where it was a little annoying. There is something about the underdog, right? When you're hungry, right? Yeah, my ribs are touching. I'm gonna snatch the puppies out there. Yes, I'm hungry. There's something about that. So how do you underestimate the underdog, right? Particularly when you're a team that one of your staples, is that dog German Shepherd mask that we would wear at some of the, games and rallies. So yeah, there's something about that. He saw the obstacle as something that would eventually nourish his growth, not annihilate him, I'm hearing. Not, yeah. And then there's something, the difference between a fact and a truth. In this spiritual framework, a fact is the giant standing in your way, the diagnosis, the debt, the 436 people in your way. A truth is the report of the Lord. The fact, the giants are huge. The truth, if the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into his land. Point blank period. That's it. And Joshua, it was Joshua that was taking them to the so Joshua and Caleb suggest I'm gonna keep going, 3 actions: silence the fear, speak the promise, and move forward. And I heard, what's that, 22 minutes? I could end the message right there. I don't even know if I need that. Maybe this was all channeling, right? And we move forward. The promised land wasn't given to the Israelites while they sat in their tents. It was given as they walked towards the giants. Right? And I'm going to read. In a universal year 1, which, they say 2026 is, because 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 6 is 10, and 10 reduces to a 1. Starting a new 9-year cycle, a new decade. Giants often appear to test your leadership and identity. They are there to prove that you are no longer the person you were in the previous 9-year cycle. You are being upgraded to someone who can handle the weight of the land you are about to occupy. Ew, right? And occupy, not lord over, not take over, not colonize. I don't know why I felt like that's imperative to point out. Yeah, there's something about that. Some of you need to hear that again, because then that would put you right back in the position of the cockiness, the arrogance, see, and they're meaning it in to inhabit or reside in, right? To live or work in a space as a resident or tenant, to take up space or time, right? And it can also mean, that's why they're saying make this distinction, to take control militarily or politically, to seize and maintain control of a place or territory, often by force. Lad, that's not what is. And again, there's something of that, if that's the attitude, right, that is going to be, or the intention by which you're moving forward, Like the Eagles, my team, I could talk about them. It's cool. It's not like the end of their legacy or their, lessons to be learned, I'm hearing, right? Um, then, expect defeat, right? Uh, discipline is important, strategy is important, humility is important. Um, and again, there is this sense of, for both teams, the Eagles were counted as victors, and I'm hearing prematurely, right? And it's not that statistically or factually it couldn't have been the outcome, but there's this sense of, kind of like one group can have this grasshopper complex and feel, oh my God, they're giants, we can't overtake them. The Giants can have this very much Goliath complex where I'll beat anybody up. Go ahead. Because I think Goliath even yelled at, go ahead, send me your best warrior. Like, he was cocky as F with it. And then look, now I'm hearing the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Right? Sometimes the biggest mountains, right? They crumble, right? I'm hearing Spirit just said it's all rock. And it can crumble, right, to little gravel pieces. So yeah, there's something about that. And as I shuffled, and what came out is the eyes of mystery, mystery, uncharted territory, deep knowing. So there is this sense of you not possibly, of you entering uncharted territory, right? It's going to feel mysterious. You're not gonna know, you know, physically, right? Because it's talking about to occupy, right? That's how it just ended, like, right, to go live in or reside in a new space, a new environment. They may be figuratively or literally, right? And it's going to be unknown, right? But one, I'm hearing the eyes of mystery. Look at it with eyes of mystery, eyes of curiosity, right? Instead of fear. And also, this is going to intentionally force a deep knowing, right? For you to rely more on, again, truth. What they would have used fact versus truth. Whose report are you going to believe? Are you going to believe, yes, the truth of, well, this is that job, or this is that relationship, or this is that, enemy, or this is that opponent, or the inner deep knowing of the promise that you received, right? Whatever that promise is to you. And then treasures in the deep and dark. Yes, there's something about, and then this says shadow work, healing old wounds. And look at, I don't know, I'm like, love the way the smile, right? And even that crown. Look at that crown. Can the camera pick it up? It's so beautiful. And it's like, huh? Why you cheesing like that about, shadow work, about healing and old wounds? But this, and then you're calling it treasures in the deep and dark. Yeah, there's treasures, right, that you learned, or that is learned in this deep and darkness, right? In this uncharted territory. I'm hearing one more. Connection through cosmos. Connection through cosmos. And it says, community, everything is connected, the law of reciprocity. Community, common unity. At the bottom of the deck, happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Mentorship, fulfillment, peace of mind, self-care. And now we'll go to the tarot of let the ancestors speak. Because I'm trying to hear if there's more to come out of this. These oracle cards that we just received, usually I would feel like I have more to share about, them in specific, but they're like, I'm hearing they need to stand as they are right now, right? More will be extrapolated, I'm hearing, as the reading goes on, but Two of Coins, right? This juggling, this back and forth. But what I love about this is, one, notice the circle around it. And that's a unicycle, right? Why would I think of that now? I mean, interesting. Uni, one wheel, cosmo, oneness. But this individual is on this unicycle, maybe feeling very alone, right? But she is protected, right? So they're riding this unicycle. As they ride it, right, this circle is encapsulating them, is protecting them. I'm hearing is this protective bubble over them. So much so that this tide, look how high it is behind them. Now I'm hearing, isn't it scripture in is it Isaiah? The waters will, you will not be drowned, the fires, you will not be burned. And I'm saying it all wrong, but there's a scripture about that, right? So the tide, and I mean, this individual is still smiling. It's a shame. I don't know if the camera is picking it up. So now I'm feeling like while you're in this like duality, right? Kind of like, about to enter the promised land reference, right? Understanding that there are giants on the other side, but understanding that you're believing, whose report you're believing, right? And maybe even going back and forth between the two, I'm hearing, right? Nevertheless, you're protected while you're navigating this, going back and forth with it, right? Definitely, I don't know, I keep hearing protected. And that fell over the eyes of mystery, right? This mystery, this uncharted territory, right? As you enter and occupy this uncharted territory, you're protected. And then we got Father Sims. This would have to do with temperance, right? Balance, harmony, equilibrium, right? Between the personal and the spiritual, between the practical and the creative, right? I'm hearing the era of leaning towards one way or the other. One extreme or the other, right? Which would be imbalance. This is us, interestingly crazy, I heard, as it seems, him on this unicycle with the two pentacles. But there's something about holding the dualities in tension. Again, going back to that example, it's not about negating that those giants are there, but, and how factual that would mean, but understanding, well, whose report am I going to believe, right? Am I going to believe, I don't want to keep. So there's this, and he's smiling too. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. He's so handsome. It became shy, bashful. But again, this balance, right? This tempering, right? Between the two. The rooster keeps it, I don't know, but it may be because I'm, of my cultural ethnicity background in terms of being born on the island of Puerto Rico, and knowing that the rooster crows in the morning. There's something been really coming through too in the messages, el acento, in the messages regarding dusk, right? Right before dawn. Again, being awakened at 3:38 this morning, right? There's something about, and the rooster, right, making the call. Usually, when I would go to Puerto Rico to visit my grandmother and we would stay there, it would be her roosters would be my alarm clock, right? My mother and I would sleep in the same bed in the back room, and the minute the roosters would go off, we would look at each other and our eyes would like open, her eyes, and we would look at each other and smile, because it was a cultural difference, right? I mean, I wasn't experiencing that back in Brooklyn, necessarily. Which is significant. There's something about new territory for you, beloved. Uncharted territory. And it's not that it's uncharted, right? It's uncharted for you. It's going to be new to you. There's a distinction and something significant, right? Because if you think of it as just uncharted territory, you're thinking of it, I'm hearing from the colonizer's perspective. That's what colonizers do. That's why they wanted to be very intentional about how you are even defining occupy, right? Because occupy has different definitions. So if you're talking about it by political and military, by force, I wanted to put the middle finger up. It's like F out of here with that, right? And if that's the attitude, the cockiness, the arrogance that you have, you're about to find out, right? Or I'm hearing F around and find out. There's a sense of honor and respect, right? An acknowledgement that if you are going into a new job, a new relationship, a new actual land, a new culture, a new language. It was interesting, right? Oh, Jerusalem, it was being, I'm like, what language is that? And it's Zulu. And then even, so Master KG does it in Zulu, in a Zulu language, but then Burna Boy uses Yoruba, an infusion of Yoruba. So again, there's this acknowledgement, this respect. I just heard respect my gangster, right? Put respect on my name. Like, there is a sense of disrespect for you to sit there and say, y'all so corny that we just going to eliminate y'all. We don't even care about how we playing or whatever, right? Usually, in my experience, when I've seen like second string going like that, it's been like if now we're at third quarter and the score is 40-0, and it's like, okay, this is embarrassing now. Let's humble ourselves. These are still NFL colleagues. Let's put in our second string now. And that would seem more apropos, I'm hearing. But to declare it from inception, yeah, I don't know. Again, who am I? I'm just little old me, right? In terms of like the world of NFL. I'm sure some expert would break it down, whatever. But again, I'm hearing whose report you gonna believe. Fuck your stats. I don't know. It's something there. Okay. And I think this is so beautiful that this comes out. I'm sorry, I'm getting because in this card, right, this is the 5 of Knives, right? In terms of communication, it would typically 5 of Swords, one-upping, you know what I mean, conflict, blah blah blah. But in this card, you see the bit. It's called a bit in the mouth, right? There's a penny, a coin. Her tongue is to the side, and here goes the knives. So it would be you, and I'm literally seeing someone in a courtroom putting their hand on the Bible, right? And raising their hand and saying, I do, right? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do, right? I don't know why that came out like that, so masculine, but yeah. This card gave permission, particularly in an era of, military and political abuse, murder, R word, I word, all kinds of atrocities being done to a peoples who believe that their God, right, their divine spirit presence gave them permission to lie if it in a courtroom that they understood was not just for them, right? There's something there about it, right? Whose report you're gonna believe, right? Again, they just keep saying that. Whose report you're going to believe? Because I promise you, I went down this rabbit hole about numerology, and then it said, well, in 2026, this may be unlucky and all that. And I started getting all, you know, forlorn, I'm hearing, and, you know, crying out to God again. And it was like, whose report you going to believe? Are you going to believe, you know, Google, Chat GPT, AI, numerology, astrology, theology, all the ologies, or you going to believe me? Right? I'm the one, right? There's something about, yeah, connection through the cosmos. Like, did you forget? Everything is connected. Did this? Yeah. 3 of 6. Yeah. There's this deep knowing, right? It fell over the deep knowing. And even over this, you know, back and forth. That something is a coming. I don't know why they have me say something is a coming. Right? And then this person has this long green cloak. Again, then they keep saying protection, protect. Again, more. You're protected. What's coming in for you is protected. Oh, there was a scripture. And covered, right? It's covered for a reason, right? Only this person could see it. Us as onlookers, we see the water, but we don't see the ship or what's actually on the ship or what actually is coming in. You know, we just see I'm hearing the practitioner, the person, and we understand that they're protected. So much protected even from us, the onlookers. And here I am doing the interpretation. There's something that, man, it's been cocooned. It's been protected for you. Look at this. 10 of baskets. Mi familia. Right? So whatever this is, I just heard it's so much bigger than just you. Right? With spirit, kind of like in the story of like Joshua and Caleb and all that, right? In the promise, it was not just about Ibrahim, you know. I mean, in fact, he stood on the mountain as he saw them cross over. He couldn't even cross over. When you would think that the story was about, I mean, like, think about Abraham, right? And how Abraham was visited, right? And all that, you know, he did, right? But it was so much bigger than him. I don't know, I just got really emotional for him. Like, I just can only imagine him standing on the mountain and watching the people that he loved, that he tended to, that he was obedient for, right, cross over, and him not being able to. Interesting. There's significance there, and I'm hearing ancestral, right? It's very much similar to our ancestors who prayed for us, right? Particularly those, right, who were beaten, bruised, murdered. Can I say that, honey? But endured such atrocities, right? And died in them and couldn't see. You know, now I'm hearing Dr. King, Martin Luther King, giving this speech about, you know, I've seen the promised land, right? But again, dying prior to seeing some of the yeah, now I'm seeing Dr. King walk so Obama can run, right? I mean, there's some ancestors that, could even fathom or even imagine that a black man would be in the Oval Office, a black family, right? There's something again about whose report will you believe, and something about understanding that this promise, whatever the promise that has been made to you, beloved, is so much bigger than you, right? This is for generations to come, right? I mean, even when we're talking about the Bible, whether you agree with it or not, or any other, here we are, 2,000 years later, still talking about it. There's something about a legacy. And I know that's not the Pentacles, but something enduring. They are mentioning to me, they want me to point out that these people have these jars. These jars are like some kind of like medicinal, because of so much indulgence that they're about to have at this cookout. Right? There's plenty. And again, it may serve, as a dual message, right? In terms of, now I'm seeing the Pentacles, right? Understanding the benefits of it, right? But there's something about the indulgence. Again, balance, harmony. Thank you, Spirit. Again, this balance between the personal and the spiritual, the creative and the practical, right? And that's what they're signifying now. Thank you, Spirit. That, yeah, they're going to indulge here, but then they also have the medicine. They're doing it. They understand their balance. And that fell right over Father Sims. Right? And this was a treasure that you learned in the dark, right? In that shadow work and that healing. You understood now, or you understand now, the power and the necessity for this balance approach, right? I've said it before in previous messages, but it reminds me of the hadith that is accredited to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, or it is told to us that he has said, the middle path is the best path, right? I'm smiling because I'm looking at the happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? That's a little saying I remember as a little girl. There's something about the youth, right? Or the innocence of youth, or remembering the innocence of your youth, right? And how the youthful mind, when you're young, right, you believe in the promises. It's not hard to convince you. Right, and then I say something about seeing the little girl kind of made me, like it welled up inside me, these emotions that I'm like, wow, right? To be free like that again, right? And how I desired that, and how I understood that as you get older, it silenced you. But there's this remembrance of it, this admonition to remember it. 7 of coins. And again, this last column seems to be one more of like warning or taking heed, or, understanding the forces in which you are grappling with, I'm hearing. Because here you see her bent over picking up the pearls that this pig is trampling, right? And this is the 7 of coins, which is usually harvest from what you have planted, right? So if in one aspect we're being told, to protect ourselves, to understand that there are possibly places and spaces that claim to be for justice, like a courtroom, but just us, right? Justice for whom? And the astuteness and knowing and feeling the fact that the blessed assurance I'm hearing that in a system that would tell you if you lie on the Bible, something wrong is going to happen to you. The Spirit is God is saying, no, it won't. Put that bit in your coin. I know that that's the sign. I got your back. Right? This one always reminds me of don't cast your pearls among swine, right? But you did already in this card, right? Possibly you put some of those pearls and look, they were trampled. But it's like while those are being trampled, grab the ones that you can and roll, right? She's looking like being sneaky, right? Strategizing, right? and my throat just got, there's something about acknowledging, and it's okay to acknowledge, right, where you need to cut your losses and roll. That maybe you planted something that you expected for it to harvest in this way, and maybe you entrusted something or someone that came in and trampled it, right? And this scripture doesn't end there. It says not only will they trample it, but they will turn around and then attack you. So she's being very astute. The word keeps coming up, right? Strategy again, where she's saying, oh, okay, I see how this is rolling. I'm going to grab these and I'm just going to bounce, right? There's, and it's already at the 7. That's hard. That's why when we see the 8, the person seems so sad when the 8 of Cups walking away, because it's like, I invested so much already, right? I put time in this, right? And fruit has, and it bore pearls, right? But maybe in the environment that wasn't conducive to you, or around the community, right? The relationship, the job, whatever, and it's okay. Yeah, you're going into this period of rest now, right? I'm hearing retreat. Whenever this comes in, because that was over the 3 of Wands, whatever is coming in for you, whatever has been protected up to this point and is coming in for you, it's going to allow you to rest. And of course, a card falls all the way down, and him hearing me move this is not good, because then he thinks it's time to go. The 2 cards flipped out. 1. Yeah, 10 of Knives. Look at this. It's an ending. You're going to be able to rest, right? And my heart just hurt a little bit looking at it, because all I could think of, right, if again, in the context of this tarot deck, which is talking about a time of slavery, right, particularly for Black people and American Indian, to see such to envision such an opportunity to lay there in the grass like that. Now I'm hearing, is it song? It's a song where he said, I will lay you down on green pastures by still waters. My rod and my staff, they would comfort you, right? They comfort me. Though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, no evil. How can I forget this psalm, right? It's Psalm 33. But that's what I'm feeling, right? And I'm just and just hurt my heart, because I just thought of how limited those opportunities would have been, right? And look at all the knives, right? Different, to hunt, to protect, to sheave. I'm hearing sheave. And how beautiful and relaxing that looks. And then for the 10 of Knives, right? This cycle is over. I'm saying, the struggle is over. The struggle is over for me. And again, it's not, preaching no problem BS, right? Because life is still going to be life. But this specific cycle, right, is over. There is going to be this opportunity for rest. And then the other card, Mother of Sticks, right? And they're reminding me again of strategizing, of foresight and insight, right? And I'm hearing now, to close, whose report are you going to believe? Here, this specific bird, I forget what the name of it is, but it's important. In that region, it would grow, it's known to it. But this specific report was given to you, right? Whose report are you going to believe, right? And that's a beautiful way to close, to end this, right? It's like full circle again. Whose report will you believe? So I just told you all of this, and you may be encountering a whole different thing that seems completely opposite, or to be the antithesis, right? Is that the word? The antagonist of everything that you feel has been promised to you. Whose report are you going to believe, beloved? Because you've been told. Again, it goes back to that card. There's been a deep knowing. You've done the shadow work and the healing, right? And you've formed this connection through cosmos, right? This oneness. So, rest assured, in the promise. And I'm going to look at the bottom of the deck. 5 of 6, which would be 5 of Wands, again, which would be competition. And again, that's what I'm saying. Going back to, hey, again, what a beautiful way to wrap it up, right? She's being laughed at. They're picking with her. And she's not too happy about that, right? And it's almost like, F around and find out. And that's what happens when people get too cocky or too arrogant, right? Because in this card, I don't have the book. Oh, yes, I do. I'm being instructed to go to it really quickly. We are an hour in now. A teenager looks cross as 4 of her peers talk maliciously behind her back. She will cross jinx them later. I don't know what that's funny to me. Oh, wow. Because there's this definite understanding. I mean, is a battle of wits, right? Yeah. Healthy competition, right? Fuck around and find out. You're going to find out. Whose report will you believe, right? What you've been told by spirit, by your ancestors. You've been given the tea. You were told a long time ago what your promise is. I don't care what the giants look like. I don't care what them opponents look like. I don't care all the snap that they talk. And let them talk all they want to. They going to F around and find out. And on that note, beloved, it was a pleasure and honor. I'm so grateful to Spirit. I really love doing this. I light up. This is... Yes, that's all I have to say about that. And yeah, if you want to share anything in the comments, please feel free to do so. I would love to read it. Again, anything that would help us collectively, that would be beautiful, right? It did mention common unity over here, understanding that we're all connected. And I'm hearing now the song, You Need Me, I Need You, yeah. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me. Agree with me. I'm here now where 2 or more agree, right? There will I be. And don't forget, right? Claim to be happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Until next time, beloved. Amen, Amen, and Ashe.